When was the last time that everyone had an opportunity to ask American, Delta, and United questions at the same time? So I'm holding the iPad. If you open your app, please submit questions. I'll just start with some personal thoughts from the Root Happy perspective. I think this dream is very compelling. And the reason from the one solution provider perspective is one, more choice for consumers in a simple interface, however it emerges, whether it's exactly this format or I think there are going to be multiple formats that this emerges. So it's going to solve a major consumer problem. But from talking to both airlines and distributors, sales channels for the last 8 years about differentiation, we've consistently been asked by sales channels, can you help us organize the world's airfares so that we can display them in a more coherent way? And then airlines have, on their side, asked us, how can you help us, get this information in front of shoppers? So I find this very compelling. So we're going to have a candid chat, and I invite each of you to be as candid and forthcoming as you can be, because we're going to learn a lot. So we'll start with one question. First question, let's talk about modern flight shoppers. What do they care about most? Jeff.
So to me, when we talk about flight shopping, the customers that are doing that aren't just shopping for flights. They're also on Amazon shopping for everything in the world. They're on Zappos shopping for shoes. And so I think the whole idea that there's a separate experience for flight shopping versus just general shopping is probably hangs us up before we even can get out of the starting gate. So what do shoppers want? They want choices. They want information about those choices so they can make the best choice for them. And they just want to understand the value that's being offered. I think it's no different for airlines than for anything else. We just kind of continually draw a distinction because of some of the historical complexities in airline shopping.
So Jeff, you're not going to say it's all about the seat. It's not all about one thing. Everyone's an individual and cares about different things. Is that
I think the seat is a very compelling part of the value proposition, but it's not the only one. People care about bags. People care about changeability. People care about seat assignments. I mean, there's other aspects as well.
I think further to that, people are different types of shoppers depending on what they're doing. I might be okay with a basic economy type trip if I'm just going like on an overnight and it's for fun and I just got a backpack. If I'm going for 3 nights and I've got to dress up, then I'm definitely going to have a carry-on and it's a business trip, for instance, or so taking cues from customers or just simply asking them what kind of trip is this helps us to be able to use some intelligence and tailor the responses to them. But if you don't ask them the question or give them a place to tell you who they are, then that, you have to make some assumptions, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, and we learn things about our customers who are coming through our direct channels versus indirect channels. And we definitely see that we have a much higher satisfaction rate from the customers who came through the channels who bought a product that they fully understood, that they had pictures of, that they had an idea of what they were getting into. And we get more complaints when they're coming through other channels not realizing necessarily exactly what they've purchased. So that doesn't make them, I think to Jeff's point, that's just a customer. It's not a flight customer. That's just the world. But clearly, customers value information, and we have to do a better job of getting that out there to them.
So as a segue on that, I have found it very uncommon for an airline to talk about your experience in your own direct channels and sort of share that information with the world with indirect channels. Other than what you shared, can you share anything else about your experiences on direct channels and how that could be parlayed in indirect channels? And also, what's the receptivity from indirect channels? Are they skeptical? Are they buying into it? Where are they?
So I can at least start with that one. So I think actually one of the unique challenges within this industry is there's very little visibility into what is happening in our direct channels because it's not shared in the data feeds that we're all getting as we're evaluating each other. So I believe actually that in the indirect channels, the agencies and the OBTs, with the data that they're looking at, they can only benchmark against each other. There is and this is part of the data that Ty was sharing, it is breathtaking the difference in product mix that's occurring on our direct channels versus our indirect channels. And if the indirect channels, if the people in those channels could see what we see about what is happening on our direct channels, I think there would be much more urgency about changing what's happening in the indirect channels.
We don't have to do every question because we've got about 10 questions from the audience.
Okay.
So
Can I jump into that
absolutely.
one thing?
Yeah.
I think one thing that's important to note, though, is it sort of sounds like we have all the answers, and the fact of the matter is we don't. And the way we're getting to better results on our direct channels is we're doing a lot of testing, and we're trying a lot of different things. And I think to sort of answer the second part of your question, what's happening in the indirect channels, we see a lot of really strong indirect channels that are doing the same thing. They're testing out different solutions. Not all of them are going to work. I think Jeff's point earlier about the fact that, hey, probably customers haven't memorized all of our brand names at this point is true, right? So how do we do a better job displaying that information? It's not something that we just flip a switch and we're there. There's a lot of effort behind that, and there's a lot of mistakes made along the way and a lot of learnings along the way that get us to a better spot.
It sounds like, is it a fair statement to say at least the three of you are ready to share your insights from direct channels with indirect channels? Is that a fair statement?
We do share that data because that's the call to action. I mean, if they're benchmarking against each other, they're going to look very similar. What they need to understand is the difference between what's happening on the indirects and what's happening on the directs.
Yeah, I'm skipping all of my own questions. I'm going right to the audience's. How will no cabin searches work in a corporate policy world?
How
will no cabin searches work in a corporate policy world?
That's a good question.
Is it the same? Is it the same as the next generation storefront diagram, if we can bring that back?
Well, I think what you end up doing is if you've got the shelves concept up there, you say which ones are in policy and which ones are not. And so it behooves the corporate booking tool and application to be able to apply the policy to those things based on certain parameters. And maybe you come up with the trip is this many miles, and so you apply a factor of cost to those miles, and you can't exceed that. Or I've heard a lot of people coming up with total trip costs based on a lot of stuff, and so they let people pick the flight or the hotel that they prefer, and then they eat ramen noodles for the entire week because they want to save their money. And so I think you will see policies evolve as we evolve our products as well.
And a corporate tool could take this design and design it appropriate to the corporate space, so they could shade out the out-of-policy options and
the travel policy itself will it's got to all be in sync, right? So if the travel policy is built around the old drop-down screen that needs to go vacation with the typewriter, it needs to be replaced by a drop-down screen or by standards in the corporate travel policies that equate to what a customer is looking at on an online booking tool.
All right, here's another one. In your dream, how do you define the categories? Given the proliferation of fare types and experiences, how will you keep up in the future?
Everyone's looking at me like I have the answer to this. Yeah, look, I think my dream world scenario for distribution in general is that we stop patting ourselves on the back and thinking that we've made it every time we have an innovation, right? So even if we get to this world where we're looking at a set of shelves and there's different products sitting there, odds are 5 years from now that's going to change. And my hope is that the change that we see in the industry isn't so much driven by us or the other airlines in this room, but driven directly by what customers are asking for on a daily basis. And so that may mean that we have lots of different options in the future, totally customer driven. I guess my dream world scenario is that there's enough flexibility built into our processes across all of us, GDSs, agencies, anyone else involved, that we can make those changes in something closer to real time as opposed to going through kind of year-long processes to get down that path.
And we understand that there's user experience and there's only so many columns that work for the customer, and that may vary by depending on which channel. So I don't think we want to be prescriptive and real rigid about this. And I think there's a whole lot of testing and learning that needs to take place. So I agree, Neil, that we have to be flexible, we have to evolve, and it may be different different things are being shown for in different channels.
And I think it's fair to say that this is a starting point. It's not like we, said, this is absolutely what's going to be. I know at my company, when I come up with a new idea, I usually, sort of draw it out and then let the smart people figure out how it should actually work. And likewise, I think this is here is a put, right? We're putting this out there, and now I know that some really smart people are going to come and say, did you think about tweaking this? We should do this differently. And we're completely open, or at least I am very open to hearing what other ideas and concepts you have.
Okay, so brass tacks. Everyone thinks your own product is better. How can we manage to find a neutral and universal way to define shelves?
We talked about that a little bit earlier. That's going to be the central challenge in this. But we have to think about what the hurdle is. So today, the one common denominator we have is the lowest fare. So that's the world we're living in. If we're going to get beyond that, and we want to have a manageable number of shelves to keep this organized for customers who at the end of the day are the ones that matter most, we're going to have a finite number that works not only on a desktop, but probably on a mobile device as well. And so there's going to have to be some effort to categorize and standardize. And it just goes back to the examples I was using earlier. It's not easy, and it's not going to be universally beloved every time. But if the hotels have done it with their star ratings and the rental cars have done it, we can do it too. We have to.
Do you see a role? So we're at a different place in the evolution of our industry with ATPCO data and route happy content. There is a vast knowledge of every fare and every product in the industry. So there is data available to create an algorithm that would group similar fares, et cetera. Not trying to be self-serving here. I do have a point of view that ATPCO and route happy by ATPCO would play a role in this, but what are your views of, and there is a question on this too, who is the arbiter? Does ATPCO create the algorithm? Are there multiple algorithms? How should this work?
I'll chime in. You guys can jump in as well. I think in all likelihood probably we'll have to get to something like that, but I'll tell you what gives me hope that we can get there, and it's what's happening right now in the NDC space. We're all starting to get into rooms together to talk about how do we do this better, this collaboration effort that has really taken off in the last 18 months. I think could be leveraged to have these exact same conversations, and we can use that same platform to start building on what the future looks like. It's not going to be possible to do this, in 40,000 one-off conversations. We're going to have an industry approach to this. So I think we're in a good place to start the conversation. The question will just be who coordinates, and you may be right. I don't know who the ultimate arbiter is, but that is probably something we need as an industry.
But we're at the ATPCO conference, and ATPCO is clearly a neutral, respected intermediary between all carriers. And so it seems like this needs to be objective, and this needs to have buy-in from all carriers that are affected by it. Certainly, I don't think any of us up here can design it. And I think ATPCO probably has a fighting chance to be the neutral arbiter that we need to go develop something like this.
Okay, so do you have something to say? Okay. Multiple questions about systems. Where do the systems stand in shelves? Supportive, not supportive, engaged? Where are they?
It's funny, I was at a conference a few years ago where Gianni from Amadeus had a bunch of circles and triangles and squares, and he was trying to basically say that, airlines, the products are so different, so we need to find a way to line the circles and triangles and squares up in some way that's consumable by professional travel agents and by consumers. Okay, Gianni, we did it. Now you take it and build it. It's kind of what I'm thinking is we're trying our best to sort of, okay, you win, you're right. We have to come up with a way to line these things together.
And anybody who was paying attention this morning, when Dirk went up there from Sabre, he put up something that was kind of very close to along these lines, which was really, really encouraging. So I think at least that's a clear indication that Sabre is thinking about things this way.
I can attest from the ATPCO and Route Happy by ATPCO perspective that there have been multiple conversations with the large systems in the world engaged in this topic. So this is definitely a topic that's getting momentum. Let's switch gears for a moment to the customer. Next-gen storefront looks great, but if the customer is only interested in good seat pitch, for example, should we be asking what customers want in the shopping?
Oh, do we think there are customers who care about seat pitch? Is that a attractive marketing tool for anyone? I don't think it is. All right. I mean, I get the point that people will care about comfort, but they don't necessarily care about 30 inches versus 31 because that doesn't make intellectual sense to people, right? I don't know how long my thigh bones are. I don't know how much room I need in the seat in front of me. I would like to know if I'm going to be bumping into that seat, right? So yeah, I think that there's a lot of opportunity here to do this better than we've done it in the past. And you know, when we talk about marketing these products and services, that's really how we used to do it. How close are you to the seat in front of you, which is the only thing maybe you knew about your seat, as opposed to does it come with a free drink? Does it come with you know, Wi-Fi? What else is part of the experience?
And so what about the nuance of shop by attribute? That's a phrase that you hear all the time. Should this whole thing be combined with a very robust way for consumers to just say, this is what I want, show me the results that match that, sort of, you know, filters on steroids, but up front? Is that where we're going?
I think that is. I think underneath these columns are attributes that are going to have to be used to categorize them. And if customers have different ideas on what the attributes ought to be, at some point, you'd think they could be able to kind of click out of this one and click into that one and have a new storefront in front of them that is more tailored toward what their personal interests are. Yeah. We're getting way ahead of ourselves here, but you can see a world where we evolve to something like that.
One of the truths I think that's probably true for all of us is that a lot of our customers don't fly that often. They may fly once a year or once every couple of years, and so they don't experience these products and services very often. So I think it makes sense to give people the ability to filter to what's most important to them, or at least what they think is most important to them, but also give them a little bit of information about what else might be out there, because they may not have ever experienced those products and services before.
And I think further to that, the onus is on us to make the information available in a consumable way so that people can adjust their front end and test and experiment to figure out what will work. Yeah. If we don't give you the information, you can't innovate.
Yeah.
All right, we are almost out of time, so the last few questions with quick answers. Have you done research to validate the dream? That sort of goes back to maybe your experience in direct, but yeah, any consumer research to validate this vision?
I mean, yeah, it's our direct channels. Our direct channels basically look like this, and we are drowning in information that's telling us that when customers have choices, they make those choices.
Agreed.
Okay, one tough one, and then we're going to wrap up with the last question. Is this going to re-commoditize flight shopping?
You know, we all didn't like jump and say, yeah, let's do this at first. There was some arm twisting. And that was one of the concerns, the circle and square and triangle conversation. But I think that at some point you have to say, let's do what's right for the customer. And we have to put something in front of them that's easy for them to understand. Otherwise, they just sort of get lost in this morass of data.
I find that question incredibly ironic. We're commoditized today. I mean, we've spent all this time and effort to create these experiences that are beyond just, the lowest available, and they're basically invisible, at least in initial shop, on our indirect channels. That is commoditization. And I think it's a great problem to worry about being commoditized when all of your products are being displayed, and then you aren't quite sure what column you want them to be in. But if you want a commoditization, that's where we are right now.
Yeah, I guess I'll just finish by saying that, I think one of the most important things we talked about here is that flight customers are just customers. And the reality is that they have lots of experiences with lots of other industries where they have lots of options, and that's attracting customers. And the reality for all of us is that there are going to be third-party channels that figure this out really well over the next couple of years, using what they're learning from all these different industries that they've experienced. And when we get there, we want to make sure that we are still kind of in that conversation and we're able to drive the results that we want across the entirety of the industry itself.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, last question each. I'm going to ask each of you an individual one. I hope I got to most of your questions in the audience. I tried to combine them, but there were quite a number. So Neil, what is your favorite airline retailing success story? Your own airline or anyone else's?
Yeah, well, actually, I'll pick some third-party channels. I won't name names, but there are a number of large agencies out there that are actively testing, like I was talking about earlier, different ways to display their products and services, and not all of the ways that I would pick out myself, but as they're out testing, they're learning a lot, and we're starting to see real differences in the results that we're getting through those channels. Customers more likely to book up out of basic economy, customers more satisfied when they get to the airport, and so the more of that we see, I think the better off we'll be in the long run.
Excellent. Okay, Ty, what is if you can do it, the single biggest challenge to modernizing flight shopping?
You didn't say single earlier. You've now added a parameter. I was going to take a moment to just say how excited United is that Route Happy has become part of ATPCO. We're huge fans of the work you're doing, and it's exciting to us now that there's sort of this industry standard place where we can put all of this awesome content out there for people to be able to get and to consume. But that's the challenge, is now that we've got it there, is to get that information pulled into the front end channel so that people can understand what they're buying.
We are working at that with a lot of you in the audience. All right, Jeff, last one. Prediction for what we're going to be talking about next year related to future of airline retailing.
So I appreciate Ty keeping me honest earlier about NDC. We are committed to NDC, but my prediction is at this time next year, there will be a growing realization that there's a lot more value across the entire distribution chain, from airline to intermediaries, to agencies, to customers. There's a lot more value in this next generation storefront than there is in NDC. But we are committed to NDC.
Excellent. All right, thank you all, Neil, Ty, Jeff, that was excellent. Very valuable session. I don't think they're running away right now, so corner them or corner all of us at lunch, and let's keep the dialogue going because there were probably 15 more questions in here. So thank you all very much, and thank you. Gentlemen.